Laura, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're excited to wait and hear your show. And prior to that, though, wanted to share a few of your thoughts with our listeners, the folks that are on our website, and folks maybe that will be tapping in live this evening. But I've done a fair amount of reading. We followed you and your music for the last probably decade and a half, my wife and I.
Excellent.
And yeah, we're very impressed with you and your
thank
music.
you.
But I also know that you had sort of a rough start in life and some challenges that you had to overcome. Talk a little bit about, you know, the you don't have to go through the details on the specifics, but really where did the power come to get through that? Because I know there were some tough things you had to deal with.
Well, I find the older that I get, the more autobiographical my songwriting has gotten. And 3 years ago, I came out with a memoir of my life growing up in Nebraska, and first in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is a college town, and then we moved to the Omaha ghetto when I was 9, and there's a big difference between a college town and a cattle town. And it was just really something for us to experience that, and we were desperately poor. My mother is mentally ill, and so she would go in and out of mental institutions, and my sister and I would go in and out of foster homes, and I went to, I think, 5 different schools in the 4th grade, and you know, it's a wonder I can read it all, actually. But so a lot of my music in later years, I just turned 47.
Happy birthday!
Thank you, and has been autobiographical. So I find I'm writing more about my own personal experience, and so when I grew up in Nebraska. My family, generations of my family are light-skinned black people. And my sister's a few shades darker than I am. And so when we went to all-white Catholic schools, lived in all-white neighborhoods when I was a little girl, and my sister and I were the only black kids in the whole school, and this was during the 60s. And so we heard the N-word quite frequently. And then my mom had a breakdown one of her many breakdowns when I was about 9 years old. And we moved in the middle of the night, as she was wont to do. She would get paranoid and the world would cave in on her and we'd get behind the rent. And she would just move us somewhere. And so we moved to Omaha, Nebraska. And she had kind of been building up to this move. She had lost her job, and she was saying, we just got to go someplace. We just got to go someplace. And she said, well, we'll go to Omaha. And we thought Omaha would be this exotic place. It's a town 60 miles from Lincoln, and we were like, oh, okay. And she says, yes, really, I just think it's very important for you kids to have the black experience. And we're like, okay, we'll have the black experience, and we were all psyched up for it. My sister and I thought, well, we'll get to, say cool things like, what's happening and right on, and, do soul handshakes and dance and have fun and hear cool music. And we were the only kids in our school that had afros. And I had a big old afro. My sister, who's darker than I have, has real kinky hair. And she had like one of those Angela Davis, Roberta Flack, like people would just groan when she would sit in front of them at the movie theater. I mean, it was just horrible. It was like, and so we moved to Omaha, and what we found out really soon was that moving to a black neighborhood was sort of a euphemism for a ghetto. Yeah. And so we went from being the only black kids in an all-white school to being the only white kids in an all-black school. So there was no winning there. And so I kind of write that, and I wrote my memoir, and the companion album, You Ain't Got No Easter Clothes, is about that experience growing up in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. And then my latest record, and we'll be debuting a lot of brand new material from the new record. We had hoped to have it tonight, but instead we'll have it about a week from now. And the new record is a combination of Negro spirituals, field hollers, slave songs, original music, as well as bluegrass, and I call the record Kneegrass, and 'cause, one world, and so we're debuting a lot of that material tonight, and it's a collection of songs about what I've been able to learn about my own past. My grandmother, Mexie Love, was born in 1880, and she was the first generation of freed slaves on my father's side, and so my great-grandparents, I can't find anybody back any further than my grandmother, but my great-grandparents were in all likelihood slaves. Yeah. So a lot of this record is about their move northward. I think they were probably headed towards Canada and stopped in Nebraska. They got tired, and it must have been incredibly tired to stop in Nebraska.
You think they could have just trudged on a little
bit further, yeah, and gotten to Canada or someplace, or maybe North Dakota or something. But at any rate, so I write about that. And then we have generations of light-skinned black people in my family who passed as white because of, their lives.
Time, that was probably
you had
important.
to do that,
right,
yeah.
Right.
So I talk a lot about that in this latest thing. So it's so great.
And going back to some of the challenges yet, was music an outlet back then, or did music come later in your life?
My sister and I always used to like to sing, and we'd sing a little bit with my mom, but my mother was a singer in my father's band, and my father was a jazz musician, and she was like the girl singer in the big band, and she told us growing up, don't do music, these bad, jazz players are slime, musicians are dogs. So of course that's all I wanted to do. I just like to be running with the big dogs.
Exactly, right. And then I got to ask you, the yodeling, how did that, coming a black woman from Nebraska, there's a disconnect there somewhere. So bring me into how the yodeling came to be.
I don't know if they're, I'm not like part of the famous yodeling love family or anything like that.
What I mean, right.
Yeah. But I just always have
just
really,
picked it up,
I love it. And there are some
love it too.
people in Africa that kind of yodel a little bit. I found out later in life. I've just always loved it. And I like hillbilly music. I like bluegrass. I like black soul music. I like white soul music. I like rootsy music, and so I just kind of gravitate toward it.
And along those lines, specific artists, who are you listening to these days, or who do you find inspiration from?
Well, I like Del McCoury, of course, Bill Monroe. I like old country. I like, I just anything bluegrass, and my very favorite, I think, rootsy singers, songwriters would be Tim and Molly O'Brien, and I'm very lucky and blessed to have. Tim O'Brien is all over this new record. He played and sang with me quite a bit, which is a dream come true for me.
Very talented.
Yeah, as well as Tracy Nelson, a woman named Tracy Nelson, big blues voice, and a guy named Rob Ikes on dobro, and Scott Vestal on banjo. It's Barbara Lamb on the fiddle, very rootsy, bluegrassy, Negro spiritually type of song.
Very cool. Well, we'll look forward to hearing that, and we feel lucky to have you tonight.
Thank you.
So thanks very much.
Thank you.